As I begin this recording, a friendly reminder, please keep your audio and video disabled so that you do not appear in the recording. Anything that you put in the chat will not appear in the recording as well. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Maggie, you're welcome to take over.
Wonderful. There we go. Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks, Brooke. Thanks, Panaga. And thank you to the San Antonio Public Library for supporting this as part of the online adult learning platform. So if you're brand new, welcome. We have been meeting every month on a different topic around this concept of self-care, discovering self-care, with an Ayurvedic twist. So I always like to start by getting to know who's joining us. So if you're joining us, if you can type in the chat where you're joining us from. Are you here from San Antonio? Are you here from another state? And sometimes we have some of our global family guests joining us from other countries from around the world. So if you'd like to type in the chat where you're joining us from, it has been amazing to have been able to meet with you every month. This whole year has been focusing on this new way to self-care, how to be active participants in preventive ways to prevent diseases and to live most fully in our body, in our mind, and in our holistic well-being. So from the beginning in January, we started looking at introduction, basic concepts of Ayurveda. If you haven't seen those versions or those videos, Brooke has just posted in the chat where you can see the YouTube channel for the San Antonio Public Library and get a recording of all of the previous sessions, including one on the Doshas for health, as well as spring tune-up. We did a session on food as medicine. And then we looked at the 6 tastes and how important those are in all aspects of life from an Ayurvedic lens, not only just for the food that we're eating, but for all the flavors that we take in through all the 5 senses. And wonderful, we have someone here from San Antonio. Oh, wonderful. Great to have you here. And then we also went into the mind. Many different sessions we went and we took a deep dive into the emotional aspect, how we show up with presence and awareness, and how we look at how our emotions are coming into our awareness, and then how do we choose to act and respond to what life is bringing our way. These are all keys to being the captains of our own journey in life and to being able to write our own authentic story. What do we want in life? How do we want to show up? So these are some of the questions that we have been exploring throughout this whole year. And then we took a deep dive back into balancing the doshas in the spring and fall. And as we looked at self-care awareness, looking at the emotional freedom, how we can tap into the stillness of the mind so that we can more readily be present. And in that gap between what we are capable of becoming and how we're currently showing up in life, we get that opportunity, that presence to then choose as a conscious choice maker how we will move forward. So as we visited last month on the theme of gratitude, how it is one of the most powerful emotions and attitudes that we can take in life, and how we align ourselves to what life brings our way, as well as the choice we have that even when, not if, but when life brings us challenges, obstacles, we still have that ultimate choice. As Dr. Viktor Frankl said, one of the last of human freedoms is our ability to choose. And when we cannot change our situations or environment or what happens in life, we still have the choice to choose our attitude in life. So today we're going to look into a little bit of that as we touch on the idea of upward spiral living. So let's go ahead and get right in. I'll go ahead and share my screen as we begin to look at the topic of discovering self-care through Ayurveda. This is our 12th session this year. And if you've been with us for the previous sessions, you've seen some of them here. Again, you can check the recordings on the San Antonio Public Library YouTube channel. So let's get right into what is Ayurveda. So if you're brand new, you can type in the chat and let me know. If you're brand new, we'd love to go ahead and focus more on some of the fundamentals. But Ayurveda, how it is applicable and more relevant now in modern times. So Ayurveda is a 5,000-year-old consciousness-based approach to life. It comes from the beautiful ancient language of Sanskrit. So Ayurveda is Ayu means life, and Veda is this idea of the science of life, or the knowledge of the life span throughout our whole life, who we are, what our desires are, how we're choosing to align ourselves to our dharma, our purpose. So as this 5,000-year-old consciousness is now gaining a lot of attention around the world through millions of people as they've discovered yoga on the mat, we encourage people to look at yoga as practicing yoga off the mat in a way of looking at Ayurveda as this wholeness model. It emphasizes consciousness. And what does that mean? It just means being aware, having a balanced sense of self-awareness of who we are in the present moments, and then utilizing the 5 tools of our senses as the primary methods of taking in energy and information, like the foods that we eat, the sounds that we hear, the smells that we take in through our nose, and so on, and how that then impacts our body, our mind, and how we then show up in the world as conscious choice makers. So someone's brand new to Ayurveda, welcome. Oh my goodness. Ayurveda has become my lens through which I see the whole world and myself as a part of the universe and the infinite flow of consciousness. So I invite you to take notes, get some paper, as we'll do some exercises in this one session. And again, check back on the previous videos to dive deeper into some of the more fundamental concepts of Ayurveda in the first 3 months of this year. So now Ayurveda and yoga are known as the sister sciences. They're both about 5,000 or more years old, beginning first as oral traditions being passed on from one teacher to maybe one student or a small cohort of students. So Ayurveda, everybody's probably very familiar with those physical postures, the work we do on the yoga mat. So Ayurveda uses yoga as its complement to help prepare the student to detox the body, to work the discipline, and to connect the mind and body awareness so that we come to life with this connected aspect of self and our ability to be comfortable in discomfort. If you've ever done yoga, you might have had that experience, right? So how do we deal with the discomforts, the challenges, the uncertainties when we're about to fall from a yoga pose? How about in life? So whatever happens on the yoga mat, I invite you to begin to consider that similar practice we can do off the mat in the way in which we choose everything in our life through an Ayurvedic lens. So what you need to know about Ayurveda, you don't have to become a vegetarian or practice yoga or meditation, and you don't have to learn this ancient language of Sanskrit. It is written in a way that for those that want to care about your health, that want to be in harmony with nature, and that are seeking to be in balance with your daily living and your lifestyle practices, then yoga is for you. And Ayurveda is for you. Now, Ayurveda can be done as a medical practice. There are Ayurvedic physicians. I am not. I am an Ayurvedic educator and lifestyle coach. So Ayurveda applies on both spectrums of the health and disease spectrum. So where we're going to play and address Ayurveda is in our self-care, what we can do at home for our own self-care routines and preventive maintenance. So if you have a curiosity and interest about learning how to live the best lives out of your day-to-day choices, then we're going to begin to dive into the ABCs of whole person well-being. We'll start with awareness, and then our being able to look at the response and demands to life, and then our consciousness choice makers. So awareness, being here, and then conscious choice makers. All right, so if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat as we go, and I'll try to address them along the way or leave them for the Q&A at the end. All right, so let's begin. tapping into where you are right now, how you're feeling on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being awesome. How optimistic are you feeling about your life next year in 2022? You can share in the chat box. Awesome. I'm seeing some numbers. I see an 8. I see a 10. That's fantastic. That's wonderful. And again, just checking in, being honest. What's that gut reaction? So just jot that down. Maybe put down a couple of ideas of why you chose that number. Why didn't you pick a lower number? Just being aware. Wonderful. Thank you. So as we dive in, I always like to connect with Ayurveda and yoga as a consciousness-based approach to holistic living. We're always trying to be aware and connected to the present moment. So take a moment right now and just be aware of what's happening in your life. What are some of the factors that are contributing to the reality that is made up in your life? The holiday approaching, the pandemic still with us, the uncertainties perhaps, where you are in the social determinants of health, of self-care, so, and political, social, demographic, whatever it is, just being aware of these inputs in our life and how that's contributing to how we are showing up most often in life, in our emotional state, in our state of stress or reaction, in a general way of personality. So being aware of what is happening in the outer body is a really great way to check in so that we can then dive into checking in with our internal navigation system. So Ayurveda begins with the A, the awareness. And awareness of what? A remembrance that we are a part of nature and that every day is this opportunity to make the connections between our whole well-being and all of the aspects that contribute to being fully human, including our thoughts, our interpretations of the thoughts, our feelings and choices. And so we check in every season. You see here the colors of the seasons. Are we touching base? Do we have some habits at the turn of the season or every month to reset and say, how am I showing up this month, this week, today? You know, life can be extremely externally focused with so many distracting things, so many cues, and so many fun digital toys and tools to keep us externally focused. So putting into practice some of these centripetal forms of leisure, things that bring us from the outer edge back into our core. So drawing that circle from the outer back into our core, allowing us to tap back into and connect with the cycles and rhythms of life. Through other practices and other sessions, we've talked about the seasons and as the doshas tie into it. Now, we don't have time to go into the doshas, but if you recall from previous sessions, we always look at the qualities of each of the 3 metabolic energies, the vata, the pitta, and the kapha. And when we know who we are as an energetic being, then we can understand how our nature shows up and how it is either in sync with the seasons or if it's out of sync. So we can identify what is serving us or what is serving to be a kryptonite, something that takes away our power, depletes our power, and takes us away from our inner core. So as we move into kapha, and Brooke put in a link. If you have not taken your dosha quiz, you can go online to check out the dosha quiz. And you can also send me an email and I'll send you 2 of my favorite quizzes that you can check in as well. So that answers the question that we'll address in just a moment, the first of the soul questions. But as we look at the seasons, last month we talked on the idea of gratitude, and one of the highest aspirations that any one practicing yoga can aspire to achieve is the concept of santosha. And santosha means contentment. So not being pushed, not being pulled by those desires or those fears in life, but being present. Through the practices of yoga, both on the mat and off the mat, and our consciousness approach to who we are and what are the choices we're making in life, this mindfulness approach to life connects us also with the rhythms and seasons of the life of the annual seasons, as well as the circadian rhythms of the day. So when we are in tune and aware of the change in seasons, the cycles in the day, we can then orient to what we are here to achieve. If we're striving to be our optimal best in our physical health, in our mental well-being, and perhaps connected to our meaning and purpose, discovering more meaning and purpose. All of these begin our pathway into connecting the dots between our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions, and how day to day we can pause and pivot. So let's go ahead and now do a little exercise. So take out your pen and paper, and let's just take a moment to settle into our present moment awareness. So if you're able to, if you're not driving, I encourage you to just gently relax and bring yourself into a comfortable sitting posture. Or if you're laying down, just relax, feel yourself supported. If you can, straighten the spine, feel as if you're being elongated. A little invisible string at the top of your head being pulling you, elongating you. So we sit in a regal pose as we pause and reflect. And when we sit in this stillness, let go of any effort to control the breath and just be here to observe. So just let the breath flow without any effort. Relax the shoulders away from the ears. If you want to rest your palms on your thighs, your palms can be facing up. If you're particularly agitated or feeling just a negative type of an energy, you can put your palms down and focus on grounding on the exhalation. So as you inhale, receive without effort. And as you exhale, bring the effort and focus in exhaling a little bit longer than you're normally used to. And think, I release without effort. And then take a pause at the end of the exhalation and just be present with that space. And then when you're ready to inhale, just let go of any effort and let the oxygen flow in effortlessly, like you are a vessel receiving this breath. Now do that 2 more times. Focus on the exhalation. Focus all of your effort on the exhalation. And then pause, connect with that space, sitting tall, aligned from the top of your head, grounded at the base of your spine. And then just open up and receive the breath as easily and effortlessly. We are receiving this gift. And then one more exhalation. And then just return your breath to normal when you're ready to inhale. And sitting here, you can have your eyes closed or your eyes open if you want to take notes. I'd love to invite you to reflect back on this year, on 2021. Thinking back all the way back to January, February, and March. As you go through each month, begin to ask yourself, what went well? What went well? So think back each month and just be curious. See if anything comes up as you go through each of the months of January, of February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, and pause, reflecting on what went well. Maybe one idea came forward, maybe two or three. Just noting that down, focusing on that, and sending gratitude for what went well. And now reflecting back through the year, what would you have liked to have turned out a little bit differently or a lot differently from the perspective of what needs work? What needs work? Again, non-judgmentally observing, going through the months on your own, reviewing what needs work. As you are present with your thoughts, notice any feelings or sensations in your body. Again, just observing. We are not reacting or responding. We're just curious, noting down feelings, sensations in the body, or words or ideas. So taking another breath, and when you're ready, I invite you to gently open your eyes when you're ready. And take just a few seconds here to write down any observations that came up for you. Any thoughts on what went well? Any ideas on what needs work? Any feelings and sensations in your body? And lastly, write down if any action items, any insights or inspirations came up for you. So make sure you capture those, write those down. And as you take another couple of breaths, reflecting and writing, there's modern research that shows that a simple practice on journaling and writing just 5 minutes of gratitude, reflecting on what went well, just once a week for 6 weeks will boost our happiness up to 25% more. So I hope that you can dive into this practice at least once a week, focusing on what went well. Okay, so if anybody'd like to share in the chat any of the reflections that came up on what went well, or noting any key insights, any ahas that came to you, and you can just share those in the chat. Okay. Yes. Yay! Someone is saying their health, mental health improved this year. What an amazing gift. Truly, in this year, the resilience, the focus, the willpower. That's amazing. That is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, my friends. So as we focus on this idea of being here now, famous meditation instructor Ram Dass focused on being here now. The focus on presence is at the foundation of our topic today on creating an upward spiral living. It only happens in the present moment. This is where we get to choose what we're going to create for our future. This is what we get to reinforce and build our resilience. And this is where we can be most fully human. And as far as I know, we're all human beings here. So if we're here to orient to being our best self in our body, in our mental well-being, and in our discovering of the map, the meaning and purpose in our life, then Ayurveda and yoga guide us to using these 5 senses, the 5 inner tools, the tools for our inner pharmacy to begin our discovery of self-care through not only what we eat, but through also what we see, what we smell, what we hear, and what we touch or do with our hands and our skin. So begin to view yourself as these energetic vibrations, and we're taking in and receiving all of this input, which is translated as energy in our body. So as we are present and commit to being here now, we choose from all the possibilities in our awareness, and what we select then lives in our experience. So how are we choosing? And this approach and this practice is known as Sfasta. So Sfasta is this beautiful concept of established in being. So how grounded do you feel in yourself, who you are? As we thought through the past year, are we aligned with what happened, with our choices? And how grounded were we? Did we feel just pushed around by circumstance or life? Or did we feel so grounded that a hurricane could be around us and we would still be established in our own being? So connecting with the power of our groundedness of being is one of our essential powers of owning our power and beginning our authentic path in healing our whole mind, body, well-being. Focusing on the sheaths in our life, in our body, in our breath, in our mental, in our spiritual levels. We focus on habits, the day-to-day choices that ground us and give us a deep sense of connection. Cultivating this ability to control what we take in and then to choose our response is going to accelerate our own personal growth. And it's going to empower us to choose more wisely, to address our universal needs in our unique way. So, where are we headed as we orient to this next year? All right, so let's take out some more paper. Oh, perfect. Oh, yes, perfect. Good health for myself and my husband. I love that comment. Thank you for sharing that. Let's now dive into the 4 soul questions. And this is important, again, to be aware of the multiple dimensions to our being. In Ayurveda and in yoga, we view ourselves as more than just this physical embodiment. Our body is just a representation of all of our past choices through the habits that form our cells and our emotional tendencies. So let's now dive into asking and being aware of some core attributes to our consciousness, to our state of where we are now. So let's go ahead and dive into the first one, which is the 4 soul questions. Who am I? So just think about this and keep repeating the question, who am I? And noting what comes to you. Noting the answers that come from the mind, your sense of identity, to the different roles you play, the different stages in life. So just jotting some ideas on who am I? Now, the next question is, what do I want? How often do we really get into a state of stillness and from the core, listening to the whispers of our souls, connecting with what is most important now? What do I want? What is so burning of a desire that it is my sole focus of what I am pursuing? What do I want? So just repeat the question a few times, observing if any answers come your way. So what do I want? What do I want allows us to show up in the universe and order from the universe that which applies to us, our own unique needs and desires. And finishing out your notes, no wrong or right answers. It's being curious of what's important now as we continue to evolve in this upward spiral. And then, what is my purpose? And this could be a large, life-defining purpose, or this could be a stage in your life, or just today. What is my purpose for today? So, what is my purpose? What is coming up for you with that question? What is my purpose? And again, remembering from previous discussions, Viktor Frankl said that there are the daily opportunities to ask, what is life bringing to me? Let this be our duty, our dharma for the day, to uphold our role, our unique role that only we can fill in this one day. And as we approach life through that way, we don't have to be overwhelmed by the larger idea of what is my life's purpose. Because if we address every day as sacred as our whole life, every day can become a breadcrumb from the soul as it guides us day by day, keeping us in alignment with our highest and best self. So, finishing out any final thoughts on what is my purpose? And the last one is, what am I grateful for? What am I grateful for right now in this moment? Whatever comes to you, the small and the great, celebrating them is really important as we seek to rewire the positivity connection in our brains, to reinforce, to look for the positive, to look for the good, to be connected with our power, to have an attitude of gratitude, even when things aren't going our way. We can experience gratitude when things are great and we accomplish things. But even in those darker moments, we can still instill that attitude of gratitude. So yoga and Ayurveda are a way to approach life in a mindful way, to connect with the cycles in life, and to begin to practice these daily orientations around the 4 questions of the soul. And with each question and each answer, we get to choose to stay on our path and orienting to our highest, best self. So finishing out any last ideas on that one. And now just sitting and reflecting on all of these ideas that are swirling in your head. Reflect on the concept of self. Who am I? What do I want? What is my purpose or dharma? And what am I grateful for? So again, if you like, we invite you to type in the chat anything that came up for you, any new insights, reinforcing that which you already knew about yourself, or something new that just surprised you. And let's go ahead and reflect in one word or ranking. Let's rank 1 to 10, 10 being best. How are you feeling now? Has there been a shift in your mood, a shift in your perspective in this brief moment that we've had together already? What we focus on grows. Okay, wonderful. Yes, being grateful for the small and large, being grateful for loved ones, our loved pets. Absolutely. Putting into our environment those resources and people that will support us, including our beloved pets during this past year. Thank you so much for sharing that. So Viktor Frankl once said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in our response lies our growth and freedom. So how shall we choose in that space where we are in life, when something happens in life? How do we choose in response? Do we stay in a state of comfort, or do we step into growth where it may be challenging, it may experience some discomfort or fear? So as we go into the B of our practice, our behaviors, how we choose to respond to what happens in life is another key component in our upward spiral living approach. And also being aware of the underlying beliefs, assumptions, previous experiences around these experiences that might have happened before. So again, a higher level of self-awareness by recognizing those behaviors that we are aligning our optimal self around. So now let's go ahead and dive into upward spiral living. What does this mean? And why is this topic so important now? So we're always trying to bring in ancient wisdom with modern evidence-based practices in different sciences like positive psychology and lifestyle medicine. And as we look at some research, the brain is really being looked at now as one of our best tools in sort of keeping the chaos out of our day-to-day activities, and how we can regain control of what's happening in life, tool up with our self-awareness, and then be better choice makers. So our brains, you may know, sort of the older part of our brain is almost hardwired to look for the bad, the danger. And that's good, right? It protects us, it keeps us alive. But now the threats that we're mostly exposed to are on the sort of mind level, anticipations, fears, anxieties, and they're ever present. They're more chronic than just sort of like an acute scare from a lion maybe chasing us. Our bodies were made to deal with one of those a day. But now we're being sort of bombarded, right? Every day. How many of you are constantly multitasking, getting stressed with deadlines, multiple roles, sort of feeling just this sort of disconnection with really being able to be present? So almost everything in our modern day lifestyle is serving to keep us distracted and in this chronic state of stress and reaction. So, and we need to be aware of how we are constantly showing up in our emotions. So thinking right now, what is the normal quality of my emotions? If you could just say a word or two, you can write it down or share it in the chat. You know, these emotions can be on this full spectrum. So where are they showing up for you most often? And science has shown us, research has shown us that negative emotions tend to have this stickiness to them. They stick around. You know, there's a purpose to them when they're acute, and they are a good source to keep us safe. But when they stick around and they don't serve us anymore, that's when we need to start to do something about them. And then the positive emotions, on the other hand, are seen as more like Teflon. They don't have that stickiness, so they don't stick around very often. And so that's why we're looking today at this idea of upward spiral living and how it necessitates that we become active participants in our day-to-day choices, so we don't get stuck in the Velcro of negative emotions and all the poor choices that may come along with that feeling icky, and that we know that positive emotions don't hang around very often. So guess what? Now we get to develop a practice. We get to orient to positivity. We get to become positivity hunters, to look for the good so that we continue to move up in this upward spiral living orientation. Perfect. Someone's sharing They feel generally extremely joyful and optimistic. That's awesome. And then it's also mixed with a sprinkling of anxiety most of the time, right? That is so key because we could have a low grade negative emotion. So that's almost, yeah, it's really important to be aware of that. So thank you for sharing that. So where are we heading? Where are we going in life? Being aware of how we are used to showing up, understanding the stickiness of negative emotions and how that might contribute to the same choices that we make every day, maybe not the healthiest or the best for us. Now let's put ourselves into the gap between what we can be in life and how we're showing up. And let's focus on the positivity because as David Cooperrider said, what you appreciate appreciates. So let's look for the good and let's look for the positivity. As many research studies show that less than 1 in 5 adults are thriving. They lack the positive resources they need to make change and to be resilient. So the positive psychology trend has taken off in the past two decades, since about the late 90s, when Martin Seligman served as president of the American Psychological Association. He's also a best-selling author, having written Authentic Happiness, Learned Optimism, and Flourish, his most recent book. And he's the developer of the model called PERMA. So the idea of positive psychology is to look at the spectrum of health and not just focus on abnormal psychology, but to be curious on what's the best thing that can happen if we did all of those choices that serve ourself for the healthiest body, the healthiest mind, and to orient to ways in which we can thrive. So a lot of research has gone into this. And a lot of great practices are found in his books if you're curious about those 3 books. But basically, the focus on positive emotions as a new tool for us. And why do we want to be positivity hunters? Why do we want to elicit more positive emotions? Because remember, they kind of slide off, they don't stick around. So if we want to do good, we first put ourselves into a feeling state of positivity. So first, we're going to look at how this can impact our upward spiral, because positive emotions can broaden our awareness, put us into the state of being aware. Also, it expands our state of mind. So we're not just narrowly focused on the fear or the anxiety, we're opening our mind to all of the possibilities. We're also flexing our mind, our choices of all of the opportunities that are available to us, and not just reacting to that one way in which we normally react. And then it's also creative. How can we take a higher level mental perceptive view of what's currently happening? And how can I think about a new way, be creative of my new response to whatever is happening in life? And then can we adapt? So as we practice yoga on the mat, truly how we become more flexible on the yoga mat uses our mental willpower. When we move our body, we're also moving our mind. So tying that mind-body connection through our day-to-day practices strengthens our resilience as well as our adaptability to flow as life changes. And then having the peripheral vision, not being narrow-minded, not seeing just our perspective, but how high of a vision, how broad of a vision can we bring to our whole life and to this day, whatever is coming into our day-to-day activities. And lastly, keeping in mind the big picture. So not getting, emotionally embroiled in just this emotional reactivity, but taking that breath and gaining that broader perspective of the big picture. And as you practice in that exhalation, being comfortable with that pause, connecting with the space. And in that space in yoga is known as akasha. And akasha contains the pure potential in life. So how can we be curious about connecting with the big picture and knowing that we are a part of this big picture as we choose our day to day? So positive psychology is huge as we connect it to the yoga philosophy from the Shad Darshan, the 6 philosophies of yoga in our previous sessions. Let's look now a little bit closer into the theoretical model by Abraham Maslow, one of the earlier researchers into this positive aspect of health and well-being through all aspects of our universal needs. Now, it's typically portrayed as a pyramid, not to say that one need is better than the other, but that they're very universal at the very foundational levels. So on the bottom, you'll see the physiological needs. We all need the same food, shelter, maybe clothing, all of the foundations of our culture. Those are at the bottom. And then it gets easier when we satisfy those needs, initial needs. Then we can look at those newer, higher level needs like safety. Now we can look to ensure the safety for our body, our home, our culture. Now, then we can look to the red, the belonging and love needs, and then esteem needs. So Abraham Maslow focuses on the common human needs as a great place to start our journey in our upward spiral. When we can perceive our physical and psychological needs are met at the foundation of this pyramid, we can feel comfort, satisfaction, and then we are open to those higher levels of needs. It gets harder to look at the higher levels, being able to look at the growth needs on the upper part of this pyramid, the cognitive needs. What are my mind needs, my needs for beauty, my needs to be self-actualized? Abraham Maslow said that musicians must make music, artists must paint, poets must write if they are to be ultimately at peace with themselves. What human beings can be, they must be. They must be true to their own nature. This need we may call self-actualization. It refers to man's desires for self-fulfillment, namely to the tendency for him or her to become actually and what he is potentially, to become everything one is capable of becoming. So, my friends, this is a huge topic, and this is just one idea of the theory from positive psychology. So the fundamental human needs also addressed in our needs for attention, affection, acceptance, and appreciation. Now, as we look at upward spiral, when our needs are met, we feel great. We may feel we're satisfying all of those lower needs, but when they're not, what do? How do we act? Now, Ayurveda brings in the beautiful concept of understanding ourselves and viewing that energy, the emotions are energy in motion, and that there are 2 main core emotions. We may feel comfort if our needs are met, and when they're not met, we may feel discomfort. So what do? The beautiful science of yoga shows that emotions can also be viewed as our unique way to respond to life by viewing our tendencies according to our doshas. Again, Brooke put up the link to the dosha quiz. So knowing your doshas give you an idea of how you will tend to react in life. So whether you have a lot of the vata, the pitta, or the kapha, this will determine how you typically will respond by asking, what did I do wrong when something goes wrong? Or if you have a lot of pitta, it might be, what did you do wrong? And then if you have a lot of kapha, you might say, I don't want to deal with it. So a lot of information here, a lot of ideas, but just the general idea that we have a tendency to how we respond to life. Are we aware of it? So Ayurveda, again, is this holistic approach, connecting the body and the mind and the spirit. And it's a systems approach. So everything is connected, including the body and the mind, with our emotions, right? And our external body. And that we are unique. And our path to well-being and upward spiral living is also individual. We're very unique, and honoring that through our doshas. So tapping into what happened yesterday, understanding what is the stimulus, what's happening in life, and then pausing in this awareness of choice. How do I empower myself to step into my power, to view all the possibilities, and today choose that choice that serves me most? So bringing in the layers of the mind and connecting you with the 5 elements from Ayurveda. Again, go to the first 3 sessions, the videos, to dive into the 5 elements in Ayurveda. So we look at earth on the right. In the layers of the mind, this can be connected with some of the qualities around the ego in the mind. Now, the element of water can be connected to this idea of the sense of the mind, perception. How is it flowing? Now, the fire element in Ayurveda is this idea of intelligence, discernment. How brilliant and bright are we in our awareness and intelligence? And air connects with this idea in the layers of the mind of our inner consciousness. And space, a sense and connection to higher self. So sprinkling these all, how are they showing up in our life? How are we connecting with them? How can we utilize them as tools? All right, my friends, get ready. So bring these 5 elements. And now just as an example of how we can bring them into our life. So beginning at the bottom left, earth. So earth, we can connect with our body. What are our physical practices that we're doing to nurture and heal our body? Water, what can we do to stay in the flow of life in our body, in our mind, and addressing what life is bringing our way? Fire, are we in connection with our desires and what we most want in life right now, our ambitions, our goals? And then air, can we connect with this concept of change and time and how we are choosing to use it wisely? And space, whatever we are in, our home, our community, if we're in a mindfulness state, can we connect with the universal aspect of space and consciousness? So writing down what you can do in each of these areas, what's your number one idea of connecting these elements and empowering our connection of our mind and body practices. So I love it. Isn't this fun, you guys? Connecting the ideas of the elements, which are in the stellar dust and in our subcellular constitution, and how we can connect it to all of the environments around us. So as we conclude, as we wrap up our last 5 minutes, I can't even believe it. We ask ourselves, how do we show up on a most frequent basis? We've looked at this idea before on the 7 biological responses. And just checking in, do you normally show up? Are you mostly in a fight-flight response in life? Are you very reactive? Most of us are in the number 1 and number 2, but there's the opportunity to choose other ways to be in a restful awareness, perhaps in an intuitive response to life. Can we default to maybe a creative, solution-oriented way in living? Or dare we dream to be a visionary, to envision the best and the highest aspect of self and others? Or can we inspire to live from a sacred response to life? So just jotting down what came to you. And in yoga, the idea is that when we free our mind, we can free our mind by changing our patterns, and that there's that dual connection. When we move our body, we move our mind. Yoga, the practice on the mat, helps us to support and rewire our thought patterns. So what we practice on the mat helps us to free our mind. As we move from posture to posture on the mat, we can then rewire our brains to support us off the mat. So my friends, the upward spiral can look differently. Look at life in many different directions. Be curious. So looking from the top down, the upward spiral can look like this beautiful spiral on the left with the different colors of our consciousness. And then it can be here in a hierarchical way, reflecting on the universal needs at the base, and then moving to higher levels of transcendence. So being curious on this map in life, orienting to the positivity, installing the practices that will keep us on that path to health and well-being. As we discussed before, Ashtanga Yoga is a beautiful one such simple pathway, beginning with the yamas and the niyamas, asana and pranayam. Those are the external disciplines that keep us aligned and in day-to-day practice to look for the good, to practice with our mind body so that we then experience those positive emotions. And then we can dive deeper into more of those internal disciplines of pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi as we practice sense withdrawal, the conscious practice of learning the focus, and then the meditation, and then self-transcendence, which is known here as samadhi. So just an invitation to look into yoga, encourage you to practice that, find a great teacher. You can look for some of our classes here in our community at iduyogasa.org. And then also connect with me, send me an email at doshadrops@gmail.com if you'd love to connect with some of our upcoming free events every June that we sponsor here as part of the International Day of Yoga. So as we look to next year, thinking and curious, as you're now asking the 4 soul questions and all the different ways that we can orient to choosing to focus on what we're grateful for and what we are aspiring to experience in life. I invite you to consider and think about if there is a word that might describe how you will orient to your life for next year. You can share it in the chat if you like, or just write it down in your own wellness journal. And so, my friends, that concludes our presentation. I always encourage you to think of some departing thoughts as we look to thrive in 2022 and not just survive. So begin thinking of yourself as a consciousness being aware of ourselves as consciousness. Accept who we are. Understanding our doshic qualities can connect us with these unique characteristics and the pathway in our life. And then commit to being the best version of ourselves and taking action that is in alignment with your highest and best self. So those are some suggestions for practicing our own personal ways to enliven our health. And next year, I'm so excited, you guys, to announce that we're going to focus, we're going to do another year. This year, the theme will be Optimize You, with the capital U meaning universal as well as unique approaches. And we'll be reviewing new focus each month on daily habits to thrive. We'll be including 4 to 5 books and basic ideas on modern research and science to optimize you in body, mind, and spirit well-being. So join us January 12th, again, the second Wednesday, and a new time is 11 a.m. Central Time. Again, visit us at the San Antonio Library Events calendar online for an update, and Brooke has also posted in the chat the link for the January class. So we hope you'll join us there. And these are some of the reference books that I look to every single session. And with that, I want to thank everybody for joining in. It's been an absolute wonderful pleasure. You can email me at doshadrops@gmail.com or connect on Facebook and LinkedIn under Maggie Gruskin, or Instagram Lifestyles to Thrive. So as we depart, one of my favorite quotes from Will Durant: "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit." So I invite you, my friends, to join us next year as we're going to look at daily habits to thrive. Who will you become in 2022? What's the best that can happen in 1 year? So join us, my friends. And for now, I don't know if we have time, but now is the Q&A if you're willing to stay for a little bit longer, and I will go ahead and turn it back over to Brooke. Thank you so much, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure to be here with you. Brooke, back to you.